Welcome to Waka Wednesday on Heian Haven. I'm Dawn. Today we're discussing Murasaki, the plant, the dye, and the character. Our selection for today is from Chapter 5 of the Genji Monogatari, Waka Murasaki. I've transcribed the text of the poems from each of our translators in the description down below. I highly recommend reading through the different translations. It's astounding how much you learn by comparing them. Now, instead of our usual pair, today we're actually discussing 3 poems and quoting a few others, all with a linked theme, Murasaki. Let's set the stage for the first poem. It's an autumn evening. Genji is thinking of his forbidden love, Fujitsubo, and then her little niece, and composes a poem. This is Tyler's translation. How glad I would be to pick and soon to make mine that little wild plant sprung up from the very root shared by the Murasaki. Let's compare that with the Washburn translation. How I yearn to quickly pluck up and make my own that little purple gromwell sprouting in the wild with roots that share their color with Wistaria. Here, Genji desires to make his own the young child who is hereafter referred to as Murasaki because of this poem. It is a wild plant, noting her lack of status and upbringing as compared to the Murasaki of the poem, who is indeed the person who shares the same root or family. The purple of Murasaki and the purple of Wistaria are here linked to Fujitsubo. This is made plain in Washburn's translation of the poem. In Washburn, little purple gromwell is the young child, Murasaki and Wistaria, or Fuji, is obviously Fujitsubo. At this poem, Washburn, Tyler, and Seidenstecker all include footnotes to expand the reader's knowledge of Murasaki. The dye from the roots of Murasaki yields a purple color. Purple is associated with royalty, and the use of this dye in clothing may have been limited to just the empress, or perhaps also her ladies-in-waiting or other members of the imperial family. Other than an association with royalty, purple is also the color that represents affinity or intimacy. When Genji's marriage to Aoi is being arranged, there is mention of if the color of the ties are true, meaning the cords being used to tie Genji's hair were purple and were representative of the ties that bind. Seidenstecker also states the name Murasaki Shikibu also derives from it. In Tyler's footnote, Genji's use of Murasaki is also a reference to another poem, Kokinshu 867. Because of a single stem of Murasaki, I love all the plants and grasses on Musashi Plain, which Washburn translates as, because of this one purple gromwell, I look on all the grasses in Musashino with tender feelings. Keep that poem in mind as we move to the next 2 poems. This, our more usual poem and response poem. At the end of the chapter, Genji has installed Murasaki in the west wing of his Nijo villa. The two are looking at paintings and calligraphy, and Murasaki pulls out an exceptionally beautiful piece that said, "Talk of Musashi Plain arouses my complaint," which Genji had written on Murasaki, purple, colored paper, and he added a poem in smaller writing. This is Tyler's translation. Her root is unseen, and yet I do love her so, the kin to that plant the dews of Musashi Plain put so far beyond my reach. What was originally on the Murasaki paper is in reference to Kokin Rokujo 3507. I have never been there, but speak of Musashi Plain, and I will complain, yet, there is no remedy, the fault is the Murasaki's. This poem alludes to Kokinsho 867, which I asked you to keep in mind. In Genji's poem, her root is Murasaki's connection with Fujitsubo, being her niece, and the plant the dews of Musashi Plain put so far beyond my reach is Fujitsubo. This reinforces that Murasaki is a stand-in for her aunt Fujitsubo. Earlier in the chapter, in Tyler's translation, the narrator says of Genji, he now longed for the pleasure of having her with him day and night to make up for the absence of the lady he loved. Murasaki is a substitute for Fujitsubo in Genji's mind. We have one more poem in our grouping. After he wrote something, Genji then encourages Murasaki to write something, and as Tyler translates, she writes, "Why you should complain I have not the least idea, and that troubles me. Who, then, is the kin you mean, and what plant have you in mind?" As this is a child's poem, and specifically the immature for her age Murasaki, her meaning is absolutely straightforward. She's concerned over things she does not understand, and wonders at the explanations of who she is related to and what that has to do with a plant. What do you think? And now for my poem inspired by the selection. A little Cromwell stands in her purple glory, but overshadowed by another who shares roots, though the tender grass knows not. What has inspired you this week? Share your poem in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to explore the Heian period of Japan with me through poetry.